as you may know, I've written several books on the subject of intermarket analysis, and I think it's really important that anyone who's involved in the markets, in any market, anywhere across the financial spectrum, understand just what intermarket analysis is and why it's so important. For almost a century, the approach to the various markets was very much a single market approach. For example, people who traded stocks just looked at stocks. People who traded commodities just looked at commodities. But if that's all you're doing, if all you're doing is looking at stocks by themselves or commodities by themselves, you're missing a tremendously valuable information. And in fact, stocks, commodities, currencies, and fixed income all interrelate to one another. What happens in one sector affects another. For example, rising commodities are normally a sign of economic growth, which is usually good for the stock market. At the same time, it's bad for treasury bond prices. So to ignore these interrelationships is really to deprive yourself of tremendously important information. What happens in one market tells you a lot about what's happening in another market. For example, when the U.S. dollar is falling, that's usually very bullish for commodities and stocks tied to commodities. So I think the old days of using a single market approach, it's really very obsolete. All of these global markets are linked, and I stress global, foreign markets as well as U.S. markets. What happens overseas has a tremendous influence in the U.S. markets as well. So I certainly encourage you, in addition to your normal technical analysis, to study these intermarket relationships. It adds a new dimension to technical analysis, and I think a very valuable dimension. Now, Lou Mendelson is one of the pioneers in this area. He's the first person to really apply the computer and neural networks to these to the whole matter of intermarket analysis, which is very important because there are so many intermarket relationships going on at any one time. It's important that you have a vehicle to measure them, and Lou Mendelson, with his neural networks, has really moved onto another dimension. I actually met Lou back in the early 80s. I was working at CNBC at the time, and I was just beginning to do some intermarket work, and I read an article that he had published on the subject, and I invited him into CNBC, which was in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and I was really fascinated by his presentation, and we became good friends, and we've collaborated. I think it's safe to say that we are the two pioneers in the area of intermarket analysis. But I certainly encourage you to learn something about this intermarket approach. I think it'll give you a whole different view of the market, and I think it should add to your trading results.